Welcome back to the afternoon's program, 4BC Brisbane, 4RO Rockhampton. It's time for our legal lowdown with Attwood Marshall Lawyers. Now, Brisbane's roads are busier than ever with more cyclists, scooters, rideshare vehicles and cars all sharing our streets. One of the most common and preventable accidents happens when someone opens a car door without checking properly first. Now, it's known as dooring. I had no idea that it had a name or a term. But these incidents, you can imagine, cause significant injuries for cyclists and e-scooter riders, and particularly in high-traffic urban areas like Brisbane. So today we're going to be talking about some of the issues surrounding these accidents with Attwood Marshall Lawyers Compensation Law Special Counsel, Claire Gibbs. Good afternoon to you, Claire.
Good afternoon, Carla. Thanks for having me.
Claire, I had no idea there was a term for this, dooring. This is something that is quite common.
Look, it absolutely is, and there's lots of misconceptions around it, and it really is quite a serious issue.
Sure.
It sounds quite innocuous, a cyclist colliding with a car door, but what dooring really is somebody opening a car door, as you said, without checking, and a cyclist not having time to avoid colliding with the door. So you're talking about a very vulnerable road user and somebody protected by a few tonne of metal. So the injuries that we see from these types of incidents are really quite serious and can be life-changing.
And obviously, if you've accidentally opened your car door and it's, a cyclist has come through and hit your door, you are at fault, then I would assume, for doing that, causing the accident? Or is it not as cut and dry as that?
It is actually really cut and dry, but as I said, there's lots of misconceptions about it because a lot of people believe I've opened my car door and then a cyclist has come along and collided with me, so how could it be my fault? But I don't know about you, Carla, but it's been about 25 years since I took my learner's test about the road rules.
Yeah.
And I don't remember there being a lot in and around the safety of opening car doors, but what the law requires, what the road rules say, is that the person who is opening the door must only do that if it is safe to do so. So it's an infringement and a violation of road rules if you open a door in a way that creates a hazard for another road user. So in that circumstance, if you open your car door and a cyclist doesn't have time to avoid colliding with you, then it's absolutely your responsibility.
Is dooring only referred to with cyclists or, pedestrian? That's a bit weird if you open a door and a pedestrian walks into it, unless there's a glitch in the matrix for them. But what about scooter riders and, other cars?
Absolutely. Sometimes it can occur with a car, but the more vulnerable road users, pedestrians, it does happen where in a split second you open a car door. If you're not expecting it, it can cause quite a significant injury and a shock. But scooter riders, absolutely. That's one of the big ones, particularly around Brisbane and southeast roads. Lots of scooter riders, bike lanes that are, the infrastructure is built alongside a parking lane, and sometimes opening that door without checking, there could be a cyclist coming along. So, yes, scooters absolutely are a big one in a vulnerable road user category.
Is there a law whereby a cyclist or a scooter rider or whatever, if there's not a bike lane adjacent to where you've parked, is there a law where they have to give you a certain amount of berth, like say a metre, half a metre or whatever? Because I know when you're driving, you're meant to give them a meter's space. Does the same apply for when the vehicle is parked?
Well, it depends, and I know that's a very lawyery answer. But a cyclist has a duty to keep a proper look at, keep a safe distance. If they can see you're opening the door prior to approaching, then it's absolutely their responsibility as well. But the law requires what's reasonable in the circumstances. So there's lots of really narrow streets where you've got cars parked along both sides and cyclists are required to sort of come down the middle of a narrow road. So it really is, the impetus is really on the person opening that car door to check that it's safe before they do so. It's like with, we teach our kids when you're crossing the road to look both ways before you step in front of any traffic. It should be the same when we're opening doors. Looking, checking before you open it. And opening it slowly is the other thing.
This is the thing. When I've been driving and you can tell someone's just thrown open their door without even looking whether or not a car is coming up. What happens in that instance if they've thrown open the car door and you've hit it by accident or it's hit you? Is the same rules apply?
Same rules absolutely apply. And look, if we're all honest, we're all guilty of inattention and distraction, particularly if you're driving with kids and breaking up fights and giving them a lecture as you're getting out of the car.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so you're sort of all guilty of having that moment of distraction where you fly open the car door. And that's the issue, is it being forcefully opened and unexpectedly opened.
Okay. So can someone still make a compensation claim if the accident involved anything, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're an e-scooter rider, whether you're a cyclist, can you still make a claim?
Yes, as long as it involves a motor vehicle. So it has to be opening the door of a motor vehicle, because it comes back to not just the driver but passengers, and everybody in that car will be covered by this compulsory third-party insurance of the registered owner of that vehicle. So if you're a pedestrian, cyclist, you're riding a scooter, if you collide with a car door and it's opened unexpectedly and you don't have time to avoid it, there is a potential pathway through the CTP insurance of the owner of that particular vehicle.
Okay. So say you're involved in a dooring accident. What should you do immediately in the aftermath of an incident like that?
Look, it probably goes without saying is just to make sure that you're safe, because if there's oncoming traffic, getting to safety. Adrenaline is a wonderful liar in a lot of circumstances. A lot of people experience, understandably, a bit of embarrassment. You might have been thrown off your bike, you're on the road, you're feeling a bit exposed. It is a time to be sort of very vigilant about, well, look, I might feel okay in the moment, and an adrenaline, as I said, is a wonderful liar, but getting the details of the driver or if anybody, just the details of the vehicle involved, because someone could have opened a door, you've collided with it and walked off. So it's having the presence of mind just to check your bearings, get the details of the car is the most important thing, but also make sure that you're safe. And then following that, it is always important to report to police as soon as possible to have some independent oversight over what's happened, because it's quite common that, as I said before, a driver opens a car door, they'll allege that you hit me rather than the other way around.
Yeah, right. Of course, that makes sense. My guest right now is Claire Gibbs, Attwood Marshall Lawyers Compensation Law Special Counsel. We're talking about this issue of dooring. This is basically when you throw open your car door and a cyclist accidentally, an accident happens and a cyclist will run into your open car door. I want to ask about passengers that open doors. It would safe to say that those legal complications still apply, regardless of whether you're operating the vehicle or whether you're a passenger in that vehicle.
It is. And it comes back to whoever it is opening that car door, when they opened it, was it safe for them to do so? If it wasn't, it's their responsibility. Where it becomes a bit nuanced, where there's kids involved and things can be quite unpredictable. So it's the same as what we were talking about before, is, when you're teaching your kids to cross the road safely, look both ways.
Yeah.
We should be all educating our kids and also modelling for our kids how to be a good passenger in terms of opening that door slowly and checking both ways before you open it.
You and I both know, Claire, that's easier said than done. All right, just finishing up, if anyone has a question you'd like to ask Claire as well, feel free to email us afternoons@4bc.com.au, or in fact you can call us as well, 133 882 is the open line. Thanks to Watch Smoke Alarms. Just to wrap this up, if someone has been injured in a cycling or an e-scooter accident and they're not sure what their rights are, what's sort of the fundamentals they should know?
I think primarily with accidents like this, it's quite common, again, because there's a misconception that I've hit someone else's car door, I'm at fault.
Yeah.
So it's important, step number one is don't write it off as bad luck. Reach out for legal advice, but know that the road rules are very, very clear in terms of somebody opening a car door. If they've done that unsafely, it's going to be their responsibility. And these things can happen in a really split second. It can sound quite sort of innocuous, but, colliding with a car door, some of these types of dooring injuries have resulted in fatalities. So it's really important to reach out to get legal advice. Some time limits may apply. But everything needs to be properly investigated. So, as I said, reporting to police is a common and a very important first step. But getting the details of the actual vehicle is probably the most important thing that you can do following an incident like this.
And switching details like you would if you were driving a car or whatever, a motorbike, whatever. Same rules apply.
Absolutely. Take photos if you can.
Okay. All right. This is fascinating. I had no idea that this was such a huge issue. Claire, I really appreciate you coming in today. You are wearing a maroon scarf. It would be remiss of me not to ask you who you think is going to win tonight.
Oh, the Mighty Maroons by 10.
By 10. Okay. Well, there's your prediction. Claire Gibbs, thank you so much for joining us on the afternoon's program.
Thank you, Carl.
Attwood Marshall Lawyers, their compensation law special counsel for our legal lowdown today.